A few general announcements as usual to get us started. Final extra credit movie coming up next Monday. Jot that down if you haven't already and you want to attend. Then this. This is the last, it's on the back cover of your journals. So I've had a number of people saying, but I don't know what my grade is because it's not in Canvas. You can be tracking your own grade. So there's a spot up here, it tells how much the assignments are worth. You write down what your grades are, and then you can create the average. That front covered journal is done, back reflections, how many you have up till now. So you can be figuring out your grade, and that's not on your TA. So this is on the back cover of your journal. I sense there might be some questions about this. Does someone have a question they'd like to bring up? Yes.
So if Canvas hasn't been updated, like, we could also use that, or?
Yes. So the point is that you can be tracking your own grade. You don't have to count on Canvas to do it. So this is a resource available to you if you want to be figuring out your grade.
Okay.
Yeah. Any other questions about this? All right. So that's there for you. There is a new blog prompt up. The new blog prompt is titled Permission. Permission. So sharing a story of a time that you gave yourself permission. And there's more to this prompt that you'll find when you go to it in the blog. The idea that this class brings up, it lets us have permission, or if we give ourselves permission to feel anger or sadness or silliness, or permission to have face-to-face meaningful encounters. So this is a blog prompt that's available for you. So you can go there and share your story of what happened when you gave yourself permission. The Ecological Identity Project. This is your final project for this class coming up soon. It's explained in your journals, but I wanted to say a little bit about it right now. Ecological identity. We're going to have a whole class talking about identity coming up on Monday. But what is the way that you see yourself, specifically you, not human beings, but specifically you? How do you see yourself as part of Earth? What part of Earth do you connect with? How do you experience those feelings of connection with the natural world around you? So these are all parts of your ecological identity. And then going back to the compass, the idea of north, south, east, and west, and how we balance all kinds of different parts of ourselves. How do we use those parts to figure this out? So use all of your directions. Dream and play and create and connect and discover and reflect, intuit, all those things. And then you're going to create something that you're going to share with your lab. So it could be a drawing, a painting, a dance, a video, something that tells about your ecological connection to Earth. You're going to be presenting that at your week 15 lab. If we identify these parts, the reason that this is the final project is that if we identify these places where we have these deep connections, then that could lead us to figure out what we are going to do in the face of the ecological crisis that we're facing right now. So it ties directly into the exploration that we've been doing, but it also ties into that environmental science and how we're all part of what's going to happen next. So your ecological identity, where you connect to Earth, might be really relevant to how you're going to move forward with the things that you care and connect about. Your TAs will say more about the ecological identity over the course of your lab on this week, either Thursday or Friday of this week. So if you have questions, start thinking about your ecological identity, your connection. Today for class, this is slowing down today. Our class is slowing down. So I'm going to have some assistance. Jamie is going to help us with a bell. So as Jamie rings the bell, we're going to just take a moment to slow down, to really take in and notice your surroundings, notice how you feel, notice what you're sensing around you. So Jamie, let's do a test run. Will you go ahead and ring the bell for us? And everybody settles. And then she'll ring the bell again to end that moment of reflection and silence. How long do you think that was, that silence? How much? 30 seconds. 30 seconds. It was just over 30 seconds, yes. So taking just those moments to slow down. And so over the course of this class period, she's going to do it 3 times, a bell to begin and a bell to end, with some amount of time in between, moments of silence. And so during that time, you just settle in and be still and become quiet, become aware of your being. What is your body doing? What is your mind doing? It's an opportunity to become attentive. So where we were on Monday is that we talked about this flexibility. As we breathe, our ribs expand and contract, and our rib cage and our backbone all expand. Our bodies are flexible, allowing that breath to come in and out. But in order to do that, it takes a little bit of practice. I often am finding that I hold my breath. I walk through a doorway and I'm holding my breath. I don't even know exactly why. Or I walk up a flight of stairs and I find at the top I'm out of breath because I was holding my breath that whole time. So the idea that when we can let go of the tension and let ourselves breathe the way we need to, it takes practice, I think. It's taking me practice. I was taught that reverse breathing that we talked about at the beginning of the semester. Because I'm asthmatic, the nurses says, okay, take a deep breath. And so I learned to breathe like that. And I think that in our culture, we're in a rush a lot of the time or experiencing stress that we're not taking those full breaths. So it takes practice. But then it takes practice for our minds to be flexible too. That was our question on Monday. How flexible are you? And that flexibility of body and mind, also, it all takes practice. So coming to, it's just like any study of music or art or yoga or sport or science. It all requires practice. It's not something that we just jump into. It's coming into awareness about ourselves and about our thoughts. So today's class is called Slowing Down to Fall Ahead. It takes awareness and it takes practice, the idea of slowing down. So with that said, I'd like to connect these three topics today and talk about how they are inherently connected. So anytime that you do, this is called the green triangle, anytime you do something that is beneficial for one of these components, it's often, very likely, beneficial for the other two. So as an example of this, suppose I'm thinking about improving my health. And so I choose to eat less red meat. So if I choose to eat less red meat, that's impacting the environment because I'm not using that resource, that cattle that takes up so much land and so much water and all the food that it takes to grow beef. And then it's affecting my money because I'm not buying the beef, so I'm spending less on food. So these are inherently connected. It's interesting, I could start at any point of the triangle. So if after the transportation class you think, yeah, I'm going to walk less. So it's something you're doing for the environment, walking less. It's also going to be better for your health because you're moving your body. You're increasing your circulatory system capacity. You're walking more, which is also going to save you money because your car costs money to get gas and all the supplies. So now I'd like you to talk to your partner and see what you can come up with. Talk with somebody near you and see if you can come up with another example of how these things might be connected. Chat it up.
I'll be right back.
Oh, yeah, sure. Can we hear some examples? Get the microphones out. Examples, green triangle connections. Thank you, Derry.
I said switching to like riding a bike instead of driving your car.
Switching what?
Like riding a bike instead of driving.
Yep, good, thank you. That'll save money and help your health and the environment.
So I was thinking like putting money into like big brands and stuff because if you're not putting money there, that's going to help the environment since it's not being produced. And also, it won't help your physical health, but I feel like it would help your mental health a lot.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, health can mean a lot of different things. Thanks for bringing that up. There's another one behind Daria, if you walk back up. Thank you.
I feel like in state college, I try to shop local a lot. Like at home, I'll go to Giant and stuff, but downtown, I won't. And I'll try to like shop from local businesses.
And so how do you see that helping? What are the connections?
What, Jen?
What are the connections that you see there?
Like not having as many chemicals in my food and like going to the farmer's market and just like supporting the local economy instead of big business.
Thank you, Emma. Yep. Daria, will you go straight across? Or, oh, sorry, Jamie's going to get up there too. Okay.
So my group was talking about smoking and how it's bad for the environment. It costs a lot of money and it's not good for your health either.
Smoking is a good example. Yep. Thank you. Way to go. So we can play with these ideas, and so this is just something to keep in the back of your mind about how all of these pieces that we're talking about through the whole semester tie together in the midst of this green triangle. So what we've been talking about, I brought this up the other day, the idea that we want to lower our ecological footprint, work less, have more fun, be more free and creative, become more fully human. And so I had a really lovely conversation yesterday about what becoming more fully human, is like. So that might be just a point of reflection for all of you. It was a fun conversation to think about. The next classes that we're going to have today is slowing down. Next week we're going to do identity and creativity and freedom as we think about how we as individuals and potentially as a collective can work together to make change for the environment that we know is struggling, for the culture that we know is struggling. And I think that slowing down is an important part of that, because I know that when I'm moving too fast, then I'm making choices that might not be good for my health, and they might also not be good for the environment. And so if I'm moving, through the grocery store, I'm like, if I'm moving through the grocery store at a pace that, first of all, I'm not being as attentive to the things that I need, it might be that I choose things, I'm more likely to buy things in plastic if I'm really not paying attention. It might be that I'm choosing foods that aren't as good for me because if I'm running through the grocery store, it's usually that I am hungry too, and so I'm more likely to choose snacks and things that are not as good for me. So how we can make these choices if we're moving more intentionally and slowing down. So what does it mean? Being slow means and being fast or busy means. What do those, write down on your paper the connotations that the story that you carry about these words. Could be the story that you see our culture carrying about these words. So this may or may not be a case of dualism for you. Can I get a few examples? What folks think of when they say being slow? Yes.
Yeah, so I feel like in society, people associate being slow with like being lazy and like not doing anything with your life.
Being lazy, not doing anything productive. Thank you. Yeah, that's one connotation. Anything else? Slow. Jamie, to your right, there's somebody over there. Go ahead, Avery.
Sorry.
It's okay.
So it was interesting. I had like two sides. So on the one hand, being slow means I'm a failure. But then on the other hand, it means that I'm more aware.
Yeah, so two sides to the coin. Thank you. Yes?
I said that being slow, I saw as more of a relaxed state, and then being fast, more like stressed.
Okay, relaxed versus stress. So this could be a case of dualism. It might not be for you, but yes, what else?
I feel like a lot of people, when they say they're busy, it feels like they don't have enough time for all the things they want or have to do.
Yeah, thank you for saying so. Busy. There's someone just up above there. Yep.
When I think of living like in a slow state, I think usually I have more time for gratitude and just to be calm and notice my surroundings and everything like that and how I'm feeling.
Thank you. Being slow for her is about living with gratitude, paying attention to surroundings. So it can mean a lot of different things to a lot of different people. And I think that that's really important that we honor those connotations. In our culture, often right now, this is my impression, is that busy is better, more is better, money is better, doing is better, winning is better, constant growth is so, and yet this isn't true for everyone, which is nice to have that sort of everybody having their own experience related to this. Back in the quote-unquote old days, whatever that means to you, people used to visit each other because that was their way of connecting. And then I can remember, phone calls when I was a kid. Phone calls were the way that you would connect with people long distance. And I know that, like, my mom still loves to connect with her siblings with those phone calls. It's important. Hearing voices, hearing the tone of voice. And now we text, and I know that this is my preferred. I go to text automatically because it takes less time. I hate standing and talking on the phone or sitting and talking on the phone. It doesn't feel productive to me, so to send a quick text is much more efficient. I'm not a phone person. And so how has this culture affected how we do food? If you think about the evolution of cooking over a fire, being really intentional about food, having to build the fire, pay attention to the fire, and then to cook the food, it took a huge portion of the day. And then from there, we went to stoves of different kinds, and then to microwave ovens, and now I find myself eating trail mix in my car, like I mentioned the other day. So it's this travel, it's the same, walking and then biking and then cars and now planes. So it's increased our capacity in so many different ways, and yet it's also affected the day-to-day living, the choices that we make. So now, how did you come to the story that you carry, the connotations? If we go back to this, how did you come to that story? What's the underlying, somebody that said something to you or something you experienced? How did you come to your understanding of these words? Why don't you go ahead and talk about that for a moment? I'm all right, thanks. Crystal, how are you? I'm okay. I'm busy.
Yeah, me too. Writing
Yep.
down I hate having doing this, but I gotta
Yep. Write the to-do list. Yeah. Yeah. I hear you. Yeah. Do you know if Jamie pulled up a video? Did she tell you or show you? Yeah, that's great. Okay. 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 Yes, perfect. Just to make sure it's there. So that'll be coming up pretty quickly. Okay, thank you. And you can dim the lights. Anybody want to speak to their story? The why of these beliefs?
The thing that came to my mind was for Fast and Busy, I was thinking about like those cheesy rom-com movies where it's like the workaholic is like constantly doing stuff. So the word that I thought of was like successful and important. And I was thinking about like those rom-com movies where they're always like on the run and like don't have time for anything else.
Sweet. Yeah. Those things can affect us in ways that we, might not even be aware. Thank you.
I had like productive, necessary, and constant for Fast and Busy. And I kind of grew up in a home, like my dad worked from home and my mom always brought work home with her. So my environment was very productive, always doing work. And so I think I kind of took that upon myself in the sense that if I'm not busy, then I don't feel productive.
Thank you. My growing up is similar. There's always something going on, yeah.
My parents were raised in Italy, so the lifestyle there is a lot slower. So I think that's how they raised me, just to like take my time.
Sweet. I love that. Two contrasting experiences. That's beautiful. Anything else? Yeah.
From what I've seen in the people in my life, I think that sometimes we're raised to believe that staying like busy and doing everything fast is what we should be doing, and being slow is what we shouldn't be doing. And like, I think that sometimes, like I've seen still, where parents will use that against us and say like, well, the reason that you didn't do well on this test is that you didn't study enough and you didn't push yourself enough. And here's this example: you went out last weekend, you should have been studying. Or you were resting all weekend and you should have been studying. You should have been being busy.
Yeah. Yeah. Sounds like that's the experience of others as well. One more.
So me and my group talked about how like we all have this pressure to like get everything done so we can like relax and like take care of ourselves. And especially with like the end of the semester right now, like so many different things are being piled up on top of us that we feel this need to work fast to get everything done so we can take care of ourselves. When really we should kind of try to be taking our time a little bit as well, instead of completely like forcing ourselves to like not even like know what's really going on and just force ourselves to keep going and be fast.
Keep moving, keep moving. Yeah, thank you for saying that. And that ties into then what might happen, right? We experience this anxiety, this stress, all of this buildup sometimes. It's interesting that the that over the course of this time, there's this increasing use of antidepressants, anti-anxiety medicine. Statistics show that 1 in 6 Americans take antidepressant medicine or medication to sleep. It seems as though this idea, the stress, is ramping up, and 65% more of the Americans are taking these medications since 1999. So let's break this down a little bit more. Why are we busy? Right? This was a really important analysis for me to think about why. What is going on for us? It's metacognition. It's thinking about our thinking. So I first became aware of this plight of busy about 24 years ago when I started interviewing interns for Shavers Creek. And at that point, one of the questions that we asked was, what do you do with your free time? And at that point, 24 years ago, people would say, oh, movies with my friends, hanging out, whatever. I have these hobbies. And then I continued to do these. And then for the next, 10 years, it seemed like we would ask that question and say, what do you do with your free time? And more people responded, free time? I don't have free time. People were getting busier and busier. It was an interesting evolution to watch. And so what is it that's going on? What is it that we're doing with our free time? It all comes back to story. You know what? It's all free time. But when we have expectations of being busy, right? So the number of times I meet people on campus and they'll say, hey, Jen, how's it going? And I'll say, oh, it's going all right. How's it going with you? They'll say, I'm busy. I'm really busy. Like, I don't even have time for a vacation. I am so busy. It's the usual. Yeah, I'm scheduling fall of 2022 already. And it seems to me that some of us wear that busyness almost as a badge of honor. I'm busy and therefore I'm important and I'm valuable for my job and I'm worthy of it. And busy becomes a contest. And this starts now at an early age. I'm sure that some of you experienced that with sports and music lessons and whatever else you were doing as an elementary school student. So expectations of our culture that busy is just what we are. And then there's the habit of being busy. This is where I fall into this category, making the to-do lists, and then once those tasks are done, I have to add more things, because what happens if I actually let myself slow down? If I let myself slow down, my impression is that I'm going to get behind. And so there must always be something that I need to be doing, and I get then irritated because the list never seems to end. The story is that there must be something else to do, or I'm going to get behind. So there's a habit of being busy, and this is something that I have trained my brain into thinking. There's destination addiction. The idea that, we've talked about this already, that we're in this class, it's 50 minutes. We're in here so that we can finish our class, so that then we can go to the next thing, and the next thing, and the next thing. The idea that by the time we finish the internship, it fulfills the internship requirement, and then being in an apartment so that someday you can be in a house. Like, there's always the next thing that's better and better. And so what happens if we focus more on where we are and appreciating where we are? So that's a flip side of destination addiction. There's also potential that some people, maybe me too, when I really dive into myself, the fear of slowing down. So the idea that if we slow down, then it opens up time for thinking about or living into the hard stuff. So if I stay busy, I can push all the hard stuff, the hard thoughts out of my mind if I'm already occupied. So using the busyness to numb ourselves so that we don't have to feel something else. So that I don't have to face reality or be vulnerable to something else. Busyness might also come from this fear of missing out, the FOMO. So what does that look like? It's different for everybody. Fear of missing out on something that's really good. It's an anxiety that might be spurred by seeing posts of what your friends are doing, and then you want to join in. Maybe you're afraid to miss out on something, and then you choose to go, and that makes your schedule more full. Is going to do that thing really what you need? So FOMO takes us out of the present moment. And then there's this potential too, the busy addiction, right? Cortisol is the fight or flight hormone we've talked about already earlier in this class. It influences and regulates our bodies and how we respond to stuff. And so when we feel that stress, our cortisol goes up and we get pretty excited, right? We get ramped up to do something. And the more excited we are, the more often we get excited, then our cortisol levels are up and up and up, and we can feel like we're on this high all the time. Got to get going, got to do stuff. And our bodies get used to that. And so that when the cortisol goes down, we kind of hit this point of this is boring. And so then we look for the next high, right, of that cortisol that pumps through our bodies. And so it's being on the edge. And that can be an addiction, the way that we go and go and go and choose our schedules. It becomes the normal state for our bodies. So there is actually a chemical addiction to being busy and going all the time. This leads to adrenal fatigue, and that's where the stress comes in, and that's where the poor sleeping comes in. The adrenal glands that are releasing that cortisol get absolutely exhausted. They're unable to then produce those hormones. So inflammation, sleep disruption, poor healing, slow digestion, all those things. And so what do we do about all of this? Right now, the neuroplasticity of how our brains are functioning we're on high alert all the time. Technology is changing, and the pace of culture is actually rewiring our brains. So I'd like you to check out this video that Joel's going to bring up.
What happens to us if we never get bored? It turns out that when you get bored, you ignite a network in your brain called the default mode. So our body, it goes on autopilot while we're folding the laundry or we're walking to work, but actually that is when our brain gets really busy. So this is my brain in an fMRI, and I learned that in the default mode, that is when we connect disparate ideas, we solve some of our most nagging problems, and we do something called autobiographical planning. This is when we look back at our lives, we take note of the big moments, we create a personal narrative, and then we set goals, and we figure out what steps we need to take to reach them. Here's boredom researcher Dr. Sandy Mann.
Once you start daydreaming and allow your mind to really wander, you start thinking a little bit beyond the conscious, a little bit into the subconscious, which allows sort of different connections to take place. It's really awesome, actually.
But now we chill out on the couch, also while updating a Google Doc or replying to email. Here's what neuroscientist Dr. Daniel Levison says we're actually doing.
Every time you shift your attention from one thing to another, the brain has to engage a neurochemical switch that uses up nutrients in the brain to accomplish that. So if you're attempting to multitask, doing 4 or 5 things at once, you're not actually doing 4 or 5 things at once because the brain doesn't work that way. Instead, you're rapidly shifting from one thing to the next, depleting neural resources as you go.
So a decade ago, we shifted our attention at work every 3 minutes. Now we do it every 45 seconds, and we do it all day long. The average person checks email 74 times a day and switches tasks on their computer 566 times a day. Researchers at USC have found they're studying teenagers who are on social media while they're talking to their friends or they're doing homework. And 2 years down the road, they are less creative and imaginative about their own personal futures and about solving societal problems. So the next time you go to check your phone, ask yourself, what am I really looking for? Because if it's to check email, that's fine, do it and be done. But if it's to distract yourself from doing the hard work that comes with deeper thinking, take a break, stare out the window, and know that by doing nothing, you are actually being your most productive and creative self. It might feel weird and uncomfortable at first, but boredom truly can lead to brilliance.
I can't believe you. You're barely 18 years old.
Baby. What's going on?
Thanks, Joel. It's all good. So neuroplasticity, that practice of how our brains are changing from moment to moment, that we're growing more connections all the time in our brains. And this is usually a good thing, helping us to adapt to our surroundings. But now like she says, it's happening so rapidly over and over. And then our brain response, as we know, that it's all connected, right, through our neural network. And so it's affecting how our bodies work too. The brain connects to our body response. And this is true. I find that I have trouble reading or focusing. I'm concentrating because I'm switching tasks so often that when I sit down in front of my book to read, then my brain is expecting to focus at different things. And so to focus on one thing is really challenging. So maybe what we actually need is a little bit more, what I need to consider is the idea that we have a necessity for missing out on some things. We have an obligation, well, over the course of COVID, right, when we were in quarantine, we missed out on some things, on a lot of things. And I've heard from lots of you that over that time, you did other stuff. You went outside, you picked up hobbies, you got a dog. How did we shift the necessary, the things that we thought were necessities to something that was totally different? I found those places where I was just fulfilling obligations that didn't really bring me joy. So now that we're back to quote-unquote normal, how is it that we can actually choose to miss out and give our brains and bodies more space for what we really need? what do you think about this? How is it that by choosing, by being a really active participant in these choices, considering the busyness, considering what we now know about how our brains function, what is it that you might choose differently? I found that there was a day of taking Luke when he was in preschool, and Luke was being Luke, he's kind of a dawdling, he's really carefree, he's really a fun kid. That morning I was not having fun. Luke was just chilling a little bit too much. We needed to get to preschool so that I could get to work, so that I could then get back, and driving all around, and so we walked out, and literally Luke was dragging his backpack and just sauntering, and I was like, come on, we gotta get going. And that morning was our first frost, and it was the first frost that Luke had ever really noticed. He was little. And so he was walking in the frost, and under his footprints, it was melting. It was this sparkling white. It was so beautiful, but I had not noticed it at all. And so Luke helped me to slow down. He's like, Mom, look at this. This is amazing. And so it helped me to realize what I am missing in the midst of those rushes. Was rushing that morning the really most important thing? How could I find more happiness? How could I find connections to the health of Earth if I'm going to slow down? So it's the green triangle again, right? The rushing through the grocery store, choosing the things that are in plastic without really thinking. It's rushing to drive someplace using more gasoline because I'm driving faster. It's all of these different things. How can we really slow down and experience the present moment? So I'd like you to write down this quote in your journals. No matter what has just happened or what will come in the future, why miss the full experience of the present moment? Going back to those intern interviews, what do you do with your free time? The moment that we realize that every moment is free time, we get to choose what happens every moment. We are all given 24 hours per day. It can be pretty life-changing. And so that can relate to your pack-back prompt, which is this: how we spend our days is how we spend our lives. I hope that you have a beautiful day. Thank you.